Yeah, 30.
This is my new theme song. That's my theme music. If podcasting was a sport where you got walk up music, that's what my walk up music would be. But it would be blasting in the stadium where instead of a bass, it would be a desk, and we'd be sitting across from each other on a desk in a field of a baseball stadium with that blasting. But we wouldn't do it in front of a live audience. It would still just be two guys recording a podcast
It's got a Rico La feel.
with an organist.
Rico La.
Yeah,
You remember that?
that's an old commercial. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like it might have not been an accurate representation of alpine culture.
I just feel like that commercial could have doubled. Like the optics from that commercial could have doubled for like a Zyrtec commercial or one of the allergy medications. I always felt like I wanted, you know, they're
There was a big alpine field, which makes me
yeah,
feel allergic just looking at it.
yeah, for sure. I yeah, those we should do a week on commercials sometime.
I thought you were going to make a clean seg to the topic of the day, and then you did not.
Well, I
And
think maybe
I won't say I'm disappointed.
you should mentor me in how to make clean segues.
Damn, you did it. We're not going to talk after today. We're never talking about learning again.
All right.
This is it. We're wrapping up learning.
Unless we're talking about like the
I'm joking. We can talk about learning again. So I have a couple questions for you about mentorship. That's how I want to do this. And the first one's an easy one. Do you have a mentor now?
no, and I want one.
Where would you go to find one?
I don't know.
Have you had
Uh,
one before?
I mean, is that a thing as a middle-aged man that you can actively seek out?
How many
Like,
MBAs do you have?
how many MBAs do I have?
Yeah, personally.
I have no MBAs.
Well, then I'm not sure you're the target audience to be a grown man seeking out mentorship. Do you have a lot of frequent flyer miles?
I do.
I'm picturing someone on an airline reading the in-flight magazine, and there's a full page. It's after best plastic surgeons in America. The next spread is don't worry, you're not dumb. We're just mentoring you. And
Yeah.
that's the next service.
I've pictured it more as a personal ad. Are you looking for a mentor?
Like OK
Why,
Cupid.
yes.
Is OK Cupid still a thing?
I don't know.
I'm not in the online dating game. Tinder? It's like Tinder but for professional development. So you don't know where you'd
That's
go for a mentor.
that. You know what? That's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah,
Actually,
but
somebody's done something like that with like a. It's called a meet or something like that, where you can. But it's like $5,000 an hour, where
whoa.
some of these high level tech Silicon Valley types will set up. It's called Book It or something like that. You can book like an hour with them for a ridiculous sum of money.
I participated briefly in a service. It was app based and it was a matchmaking service for professional networking, but it was one to one type of thing. So rather than just have a social media style page, it was we're going to connect you with other people in your field based on interests. And I mean, I legitimately did one of these or two of these. It wasn't paid at first, at least. And like I got connected with somebody who worked in a factory. It was a production engineer, and it was a pretty useful conversation. But it was like speed dating for a professional over the internet. And I was like, I feel like I need this in my life, and yet I don't think it's quite the thing.
Yeah.
I've had a bunch of mentors. You didn't ask, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Please
But
do.
I remember one of them really vividly.
I want to know first how you met these mentors, how they
Dumb luck.
became mentors.
Then, like, no joke, I was pretty young, and I spoke with the middle management or executive team at the place where I worked, and I either got invited to lunch or invited somebody to go to lunch, and then that was it. And I got, it was a recurring from time to time thing. And I just went to lunch with these people, but we would be two VPs and Junior Russ. They weren't my boss. And they would talk about work, and I would just be there and ask questions occasionally. And usually not in part too much of my own opinion until later. Once I was closer with these guys, then it was like more actual injection of my take. But I was just along for the ride. I remember I was probably 23, and there was a dude who at the time, this wasn't at the company, this was somebody that we worked with outside of the company. He was probably in his mid 50s ish. I don't know. He had like a flowing gray hair, so it was hard to tell his actual age, and a big bushy mustache. Machine tool people, right? And I
His
remember
name
as
was
it's
Arvin.
no, his name was John. Like,
Oh,
how many Johns, Robs, Bobs, Bills? It's always the same. Anyway, so dude was like hanging out at a conference somewhere, and I remember explicitly asking him, I'm like, why do you even let me hang around? Like, what do you see in this? You're clearly fond of me, but why? Like, what is you have all these peers and then me, and I'm clearly sticking out. And he was like, I didn't realize that it was a poignant question when I was asking it. I was just curious. And he was like, well, I mean, I have a dozen other Bobs and a dozen other Johns, and they all tell me the same variations of the same thing. So if I'm trying to keep it fresh, or if I'm trying to have something new or interesting, first of all, I don't really care how old you are or what your background is. If you're interesting, you're interesting. And second
yep,
of all, I mean, I personally find you interesting, and I'm trying to keep it fresh. So you have a perspective that's completely different from mine. And that was very much like, Russ, why are you overthinking this? We like, it's the same as any human relationship. And that really stood out. I wouldn't say that guy was ever a mentor, although we worked on stuff together, and he taught me a lot of stuff. The people at the same company, these guys I went to lunch with, one of them I ended up working for, and that became a much closer mentor relationship. But when I applied for an opening in his department, he was like, I don't really know anything about you. And I'm like, we've been going to lunch weekly for 3 years. What do you mean you don't know anything about me? It worked out.
yeah.
It worked out fine in the end. It was him. It was a him thing, not a me thing. So
Well,
yeah, just dumb luck. That's how I found my mentors.
I think because I'm fascinated with that question. I think the the institutions like the you know the Masons, or the Knights. What are they called? Knights of
Knights of
Columbus.
Columbus,
Yeah,
Kiwanis Club,
Kiwanis
Rotary
Club.
Club, Lions Club,
Yeah, fraternal organizations. I think
Fraternal Order of Police. That's a real one.
it is, but I thought that was more like a whatever.
I don't even know what that is. I just know they sponsored the police athletic league for a while when I played soccer.
Yeah,
I'm
but
sorry.
I think those institutions, those fraternal organizations that were so prevalent in society, that's where a lot of mentorship happened, and we don't have those anymore.
Citation needed. You are not in them now, but that doesn't mean they don't exist.
Why? Of course they exist, but they're all 140 years old. I mean, the people in there are very old. I know this because I did a, I was interested probably 5 years ago in joining the Masons, the
Yeah.
Freemasons here in Louisville.
Aren't you going to get strung up if you say anything about them?
I didn't do anything. Um, it's an older group. They skew really, really old. You have to be sponsored to be in. Like somebody has to vouch for you.
Okay, look, I'm gonna throw you a bone here, and I'm gonna say that I agree with the arguably obvious statement that old boys clubs are full of old boys.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the general gist of social organization that also has a service bent and a networking bent to it. First of all, I'm not sure that was ever a young man's game. And second of all, they definitely exist
Young
and don't just have old people in them.
young men organizations. Oh, I'm sure they do. They're not the ones that I think I'm equating with the.
I don't think it's any of the names we just said.
Yeah, no, I know it's
It's
not.
going to be some random name we've never heard of.
Well, like around Louisville, there's the Young Professionals, or you
That's
know,
really the full name.
YPAL, what Young Professional Association of
I'm
Louisville.
really sorry for making fun of that. I shouldn't have laughed.
That's the full name.
Isn't young professional 2/3 of what the term yuppie is derived from?
Young Urban Professional. Yeah, I don't
Would
know.
would you qualify for that anymore?
Yeah,
What I mean, what's the
look at this
what's the
jaw.
threshold? That's all I'm saying is what's the threshold?
A BMI under 20, and you qualify.
So looking young is going to cut it.
I think so.
If you dyed your hair, would you tell?
I don't dye my hair, but I have grays in the sides
Would you be honest if I asked you and you dyed your hair, would you tell me the truth?
for sure.
All right. I believe you when you say that.
Yeah,
A lot of men are really uncomfortable about admitting that they dye their hair.
I would I when it goes gray, it's going to go gray. I don't care. It
You know,
doesn't bother me.
I would consider somebody who lied about dyeing their hair to be kind of a disqualifier for being my mentor. Not because I think there's anything wrong with lying about dyeing your hair or dyeing your hair, but I would have a really tough time being on the same page mentorship wise.
There's something wrong with lying about dyeing your hair.
Well, I hesitate to put so much of a judgment, like a is it good or bad? I don't know if it's wrong. It just is incompatible with the way that I'm likely to continue to run my life.
Can you mentor me on the skills of lying, please?
No, we can talk about lying. Everybody lies. The
I
science of
agree.
lying is wild. People think they don't lie, and then there's studies about how often in a day somebody lies. It's dozens of times a day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with mentorship, what I would love to come across, and I don't need mentored. I'm not seeking mentorship in a lot of like personal areas. Like I have other means for that, but navigating, um, someone who's been down a path that I'm going down and has, learning their learnings, I think would be beneficial. And I'd never have anyone to bounce ideas off of for a bunch of reasons. And it's not a woe is me thing. It's just that would be nice. Someone who has, an entrepreneur in a tech space that has navigated how to do some of those things, I think would be very nice for me.
I'm not going to say who this is because I still talk to them, but there's somebody who I potentially am going to work with, and I'm like, I am worried that you don't have a person to bounce ideas off of. Are you, do you, and it's not you. Just to be
Yeah,
clear, this is
it could
somebody
be.
else. This is somebody, well, I would know so I'm going to go to this person and say, who is your sounding board? And it wouldn't be a question like you need to have somebody who's your sounding board per se. It's more like, how did you end up in a situation where you don't have a sounding board for the last X number of years? A humongous part of my ability to do my job has depended on having a sounding board. And prior to that, it was dependent on having one or several, formal or informal mentors in a series. The formality part is hard too. If somebody just is your confidant, but has walked a path that you've walked before, they're not necessarily a mentor. I mean, the lunch bunch, that was not actually a name that they ever used. It was just a bunch of people that went to lunch, 3 to 5. But one of those people, I was like, I consider you a mentor. I was like, I'm not a mentor. I'm nobody's. It was like Charles Barkley talking about how he's nobody's role
I'm
model.
nobody's role model.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not your role model.
And I'm like, well, I don't think you have a choice in this because if you tell me how I should do stuff and I come to you indirectly for advice and you model how you go about your professional and personal life as a professional, how is that not mentorship? You know what I mean?
What are some of the things that you can point to, specifically, that you think are benefits from having had those mentorship relationships?
All right, so it's there's a couple of things. Having somebody who is in your corner but also neutral is hugely beneficial, because if you get into negative self-talk, or if you feel like the results aren't speaking for themselves, or if they're not coming quickly enough, being able to go to someone else who has no particular reason to lie to you. They have every reason to just tell you the truth about yourself, but they also don't want to be a jerk. And, they're not a critic. They're not a customer. They're not necessarily a peer. They can just tell you how it actually is. So if you're not doing a good job, or if the results aren't clear, they can just say, well, you're unhappy with your results because it doesn't seem like you've produced the thing that you wanted to. Which side of this equation was wrong? Did you want to produce the wrong thing and didn't get there? Or did you want to produce the right thing and failed to achieve the thing you want? How would you change it next time? It's not therapy, but having somebody who you trust and who you think, or you see as being, maybe not. I used to think of it as more successful than me, but a bunch of people pointed out that it's more like on a further step in a different version of their own success, as opposed to just, more successful. And so if I was respecting these people on their take and their ability to navigate life, it was very helpful to have them, like, either tell me I'm not crazy, or tell me, yeah, you are messing up, in a way that still had, guardrails on it and wasn't a performance review. I mean, that was the thing that was helpful, was just a person. Have you ever heard of this concept of the third place?
No.
It's kind of been
Explain.
tipped on its head post pandemic, but what used to be this idea of
Oh, yeah,
third
yeah, yeah, yeah.
place, you have your house,
Yeah.
you have work or school, you have somewhere else, which for like the cab drivers in the next town over from here is that one Starbucks over off the highway. Like, they're always, the whole cab driver community is like at that Starbucks outside every day. That's their third place. But you have to have a third place of people too, not your boss, not your customer, not your coworker, not the people that report to you. And this is like the third place of people as the mentor.
So, do you think when in some time past, when third places were a thing, that people built a place with the implicitly saying, I'm building a third place, or this is just the thing that ended up being the cool place to go?
I think it's human nature. I think the natural, you know, settling of, where am I? Think of Freud at the cafe. It's not at the university. It's not at his house. It's at the cafe, talking about cigars. This is this is where the heavy thinking was being done, when it was a different category of thinking. I don't know. I don't know that it has to be three, but certainly in modern times, I feel like it was a naturally emergent thing. I don't think anybody said like we're we're going to be the third place.
Yeah, but so the reason why I asked that question is there's a pretty cool brewery here in town that hosts a thing called Nerd Night.
Yeah.
And I went to Nerd Night. That's another discussion. But one of the speakers at Nerd Night was talking about a specific third place, and it was her thing, and it was like not a independent thing, an organic thing. It was a third
It's the
place.
third place. I'm making this the third
Yeah,
place.
and I obviously understand conceptually what that is, but those are, to me, those have just always been things. Like, we went to Hardee's. The third place in high school,
Oh yeah.
early high school, was Hardee's.
McDonald's
Everybody,
is notorious for being,
yeah,
breakfast meeting for town people.
yeah. So, like, what's the intentionality behind naming my thing a third place? Do we need that? Is that
I feel like it's signaling that you've read the same study that Russ read, and that you're targeting a certain tier of person who knows what that is, or would hear about that thing and be like, "Oh yeah, I've noticed that too. It's cool that it's a real thing. It's cool that it's a science. Oh yeah, you're getting people that are looking for a little bit of um, intellectualism or pseudo intellectualism to your brand." uh,
To your brand.
to your brand. I
It
don't
makes
know.
sense.
I bec
I I love the concept, and I, of course, all of us have frequented any number of third places over the years without knowing for sure that it was a third place.
you know what I think is an important observation I'm just making right now. So I've never had this thought before in my life. I know I usually bring recycled thoughts here. The third place and the mentorship, they were like hand in hand. All the
Yeah,
good mentoring was at a third place. Frequently Taco Bell, sometimes other places. It was these were manufacturing people. So
this,
talking basically the same story was told to me every single time about how when trying to run operations in a plant, Taco Bell was a great example of how to do lean production operations. And hey,
yeah,
the story never got old for me.
yeah.
Because I was young and I was looking for mentorship and I was looking to enjoy the third place.
So, I always come back to this, and I'm interested in your take. Where did it go and what happened, or did it not go anywhere?
No, I do. I think it shifted a lot. I mean, the idea of a well, so let's stick with the manufacturing domain. The idea of apprentice and journeyman or master who is then having one or many people come through a series of apprenticeships. I mean, that's really formal, right? And so if you need to learn the skills of machining, or if you need to learn the skills of being an electrician or being a plumber, I mean, apprenticeship is not gone by any stretch of the imagination in the skilled trades. There is a certain, I think, morphing and more casualness to what that looks like now. And as you have a smaller percentage of the population working in the skilled trades, there's no apprenticeship equivalent to how do I run a Taco Bell. You have manager in training. I mean, Taco Bell is a horrible example of that, but Chick-fil-A is a pretty okay example of it. And Panera Bread, not a bad example. I mean, you want to be a contemporary apprentice, go be the manager in training at one of those places. Like I don't want to do it, but it does seem like it feels exactly the same. Very traditional. I'm junior, I'm learning from somebody senior. There's a set of things that you have to learn how to do. There's a set of steps you're going to take, and the whole point of this is eventually young you will become old me. I will retire and ride off into the Panera funded sunset, and like that'll be the thing.
So I get that aspect. That's a formal economic model aspect. That's a trade aspect. I'm thinking more in personal lives, like decision making. I think about mentorship. There's a number of different ways for me to learn professionally, but from like, what are the things that I'm missing in a personal development sense to allow me to do what I want to do professionally, like
Mm-hmm.
skills. How do I conduct myself in this situation? Those are the types of, what are you, if I'm, and just as an example, and these are things that I'm interested in. If I start an LLC, but I've got two other LLCs that I want to start, how do I structure this whole thing? Like,
Yeah.
what do I, what, there's so much that was passed down in a personal business sense, like how to move from where you're at to the next station, independent of learning a trade or a skill, but just like, okay, you want to do X, this is how you do, this is how I did mine. These are the tools available to you today. This is what I would recommend, like in a more personal developmental sense. Where did those things go? Because I think that used to take place at the Kiwanis Club and at the Masons, and so those fraternal organizations where you'd have people that come from, guys, that men typically, that have done X thing and have stories to tell, and over a beer, and in between getting razzed for something, the younger person is going to get stories about how X guy did X thing, and how he should do X thing, and that doesn't exist today for me. And I've got all my faculties observing where I could find that, and it doesn't exist.
I think we're both over the hill for
Hey,
traditional mentor, like not even traditional in terms of what it was, but our vision of what that sort of relationship looked like. I mean, look, if I go find somebody tomorrow who is, I don't know, Charlie down the street who had a paving company for years and years and years, and I seek his input on what was it like to run a business now that I'm, working for myself. That may be a useful mentor mentee relationship, but I've become impatient. I've become rigid compared to what I used to be. I've, I've in certain ways, I've lost a certain set of ambitions that I had otherwise because because we talked about this about learning skills and you know realizing that a thing isn't going to work quickly and then stopping and doing something else. That comes part and parcel with being less open to somebody else's advice. Like we spend less time on, can we build up the ability to accomplish stuff, because we have the ability to accomplish stuff. We've built it up over time so far, and it's lucrative to spend our time doing the stuff that we've learned how to build. And I struggled with this a lot because after I had good mentorship relationships, the last one was really like a mentor protege. Guy was going to retire. He needed somebody. He was thinking of somebody to protect the legacy. I kind of got like trained up on that. That went well. That was beneficial for me. I think he felt like it was left in good hands. That was a year and a half long process. And then that was it. It was like that was the last time I had, no offense to him, but some old guy like explaining the ropes to me with a plan that I didn't necessarily see at the time, but then became emergent later. Now I have technical people who mentor me through particular things, but it's not like someday, Simba, everything you survey will, under the sun will be
Yeah.
yours. It's nothing like that at
So
all.
so I'm thinking more, and maybe I'm talking too niche, whatever, about mentorship in my personal experience. But for me, it goes like this. You just made an interesting point that solidified it for me. I don't need mentored in doing what it is that I currently do in my life.
Yeah, exactly.
I know how to do that. That's come from a lot of years of a lot of stuff. I'm interested in doing other things in my life, bigger swings, and not like, that should be in a self-aggrandizing sort of, should be taken that way. But I'm interested in doing other things in my life, entrepreneurship specifically, and in a bunch of different areas. So what does that look like? I don't know. I need a mentor, somebody who's of character. I don't want to learn how to, build a greasy bar or something and scam, a gambling ring in the back room. I'm not interested in that. But
That'd
somebody
be a good
who's,
movie though.
it would, can you mentor me on, but I'm interested in like, and I think that's the important point for me on this, is to go from whatever narrow sphere most of us live in. Even for those that have broad life experiences, we still have a narrow sphere. To get out of that sphere requires guidance, unless you just want to fail a whole bunch of times real hard in real time. And that's a young man's game. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So where are the cheat codes from the people who have done that transition from thing that they've done to thing that they wanted to do? What lessons did they learn, and how can I leverage their lessons to do what I want to do?
I mean, I have a cheat code that I'm not executing. So I feel like I've been like, I'm open minded. I'm looking for a mentor. I need somebody to show me the ropes of stuff. I feel like I've narrowed it down relatively well. I feel like I've put out feelers. I've formally proposed it to a couple of people. I've had other people in mind and didn't formally propose it. Like it's been a thing for 5+ years, and I keep not finding a replacement for what used to be this mentor protege relationship. And I don't know that I've given up on it, but I think that I feel closer to the next thing I need to be trying is, I need to have why is it that I don't have any pretty close relationships with somebody who's 20 years older than me, and
Yeah.
simultaneously a pretty close relationship with somebody who's 20 years younger than me, and neither one can be related to me. That it needs to be like basically random, And you just need to be like, I get along with this person for all these reasons. The person that's 20 years younger than me is absorbing all, like it's the gray haired mustachy guy. I need to find my equivalent to young me. And then I just need to find somebody that's older than me. I feel like if I just say old, that's ageist, and we're gonna get thrown off the air.
Well, you've kind of been dusting me. You've been brushing me back with that pitch a time
You're
or
like
two.
what, 3 years older than me looking, 3 years younger than me looking.
My
It's been cookie. It's
biological
been
age.
it's been honestly, it's been cookie season, and I feel like we are on a path to where you are going to look younger than me in the next 2 to 3 months.
No, you have a youthful appearance. It's that full head of hair. I think that has something
Yeah,
to do with it.
it helps. It helps. Definitely, if I
Yeah,
was balding, I'd look older.
I think, and the thing that most people get wrong. I don't know how we got here, but I think the thing most people get wrong with looking, you know, chronological age versus biological age is so much of it's internal too. Like you know, if if there's a war inside a person,
Yeah,
that tends to manifest in the physical appearance, I feel like.
I don't feel like there's a war inside me unless I've just eaten Taco Bell, and then I definitely feel like there's a war inside me.
And then you need mentored on how to end the war.
Do you want an analogy to wrap things up here? My mentorship was very centrally focused on me being young and having executive people and Taco Bell all bundled up, kind of like it was in a tortilla. And I find as I seek and I fail to find a new mentorship, I go back to Taco Bell on my own, and it never fails to not be as good as I remember.
Yeah.
It's never as good as I remember.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think maybe it's more about me than
Yeah.
it is about Taco Bell.
It is. But I need it. So if you have, if you're looking for a finder's fee for a good mentor for me, you or whoever might hear this, I'm open.
This is our most frustrating and frustrated episode yet.
It
This is
it's
not
it's
where I
my
thought this was gonna go.
it's my most frustrating.
It's super. I was like, oh yeah, I'll have some insight into this. We'll solve some problems today. No,
I was
nothing but
look
more problems.
I was looking to you for clarity here, and
Well, see you tomorrow.